the Web of Wyrd. The Web of Wyrd connects us all. The world's a strange place, but we're all one big family. You ready to get weird?
All right. Welcome back to the Web of Wyrd. Got a show for you today about ESP and non-local consciousness.
Yes, you're Tall Paul, and I'm Little J, Little Joanna over here. What's up, everybody?
What's up, y'all? How are you?
I'm doing okay, I think. Excited to be hanging with you, though, today for a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, so ESP and non-local consciousness. I do like that term, non-local consciousness, because it plays into everything that is weird. The past, the present, and the future at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely an umbrella term for a lot of phenomenon. Phenomenon.
Phenomenal.
Okay.
Totally.
Sorry. When I hear the word phenomenon, that's what I think of. Right? Isn't it the Muppets? Phenomena.
Yeah, it's the Muppets, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but the Web of Wyrd. So,
what do you want to say about the Web of Wyrd?
Web of
like
Wyrd,
the rune?
like our logo, the rune.
Yeah, yeah. Why did we pick that?
We
Bruh. I'm sorry.
You
started it. You started the brooch.
Yeah, we picked it because it's it's supposed to be a combination of all the different runes together. And to me also, it kind of reminds me of that like Native American theme, the spider web, where everything's
that
kind
creatrix, the creatrix sort of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like all of our destinies are connected, and that's meshed into the planet and the fabric of the universe. And what are your thoughts about the Web of Wyrd?
It is, let's see, well, it's a symbol of sort of that web of destiny or karma or creation. It also has sort of the lineage that you are blessed with in this life, which we call, I guess, the present. But then it's also connected to a place where it's like the past and the present and the future. It's connected to that place where sort of time is not linear. So, and then just tying that into this idea of non-local consciousness, I feel like that place or that concept is also tied into non-linear time and space, that place. Yeah. So I think the Web of Wyrd is, I guess, a symbol of that your consciousness or your intent can affect things retroactively. It can affect things in the present. It can affect things in the future. I said infect.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, another native-based idea is that when you heal yourself, you heal your ancestors 7 generations back. It's kind of
right. 7 generations back and forwards
and forward. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah.
The actual word "weird," I believe, comes from Greek, and the 3 fates, the Wyrd sisters.
The Wyrd sisters. I'm your weird sister.
Well, that's true.
Both your sisters are weird, to tell you the truth.
That's true. I'm probably weirder than both of you, but I don't think there's a contest. But
yeah, I was going to say, hey, man.
So in our lineage, the Wyrd sisters are referred to as the Norns.
The Norns, yeah.
Yeah. Rudher, Verdante, and Skuld or something like that. I don't know. I get really bad with pronunciation of Norse terms, but yeah, so that's where that comes from, our ancestry. So that's all kind of wrapped up into it. And why we chose the emblem too is we wanted to make it more of like family and friends experiential discussion sort of thing about the Web of Wyrd and normalizing the paranormal and strangers, stuff like that too, as well. So
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a family lineage, I think, that we are, I don't know, representing, bringing through something in that realm. I feel like you and I have sort of had this connection for years, and I'm glad that we are, plugging in, like you said, to our other family, our chosen family, our friends, and bringing out, sort of that common experience of the other or the phenomena. And yeah, it's special to do that with my big brother too. I love you, big brother. Yeah.
Love me too, sis. Yeah. So ESP, we do have.
Oh yeah, let's talk about actually what we're going to talk about. Wow.
But this is a segue too, because we have a history of ESP in our family. As far as I'm aware, it's mostly from our mother's side. Their Aunt Mill and her Uncle Charlie. I think he's got a few of those clairs, they call them.
Yeah. Do you remember he always called his finger, is this the index finger? Right? This is the index.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember he always called it his wizard finger?
Yeah. He did.
I remember that from when I was a kid. My wizard finger. And he would do stuff with his wizard finger. Anyhow, I still believe it.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Uncle Charlie.
But how is Uncle Charlie and Great Aunt Millie, how are they doing ESP? Like what did that? I don't know this story.
Okay, so the Aunt Mill stories that I know, from what Mom says, she says two different things. She said that Aunt Mill used to take her and Charlie out on a boat fishing, and Aunt Mill would reach out and connect with the fish and make the fish come to the top of the water and stuff like that, and try to teach them how to do it.
That's some Norwegian shit right there.
Yeah, no shit.
How can my psychic ability be functional? Well, I could call in the fish, so we have a good catch that day.
Yeah, so we can have something to put on the left so later. Yeah.
Make some lutefisk, and store it for the winter.
Hey, functional. Yeah, so there was the fish story, and then there's also the playing cards. And Ma says that Aunt Mill used to bring out the deck of cards and try to have them guess which card she had. So it's kind of like the
ESP trainer app that I have on my phone from
Russell Targ.
Yeah. That's like Ollie's, he steals my phone and opens it and he plays the ESP trainer. Like of all of the apps on my phone, he could open up Instagram and scroll. He could do all this stuff. But what he chooses to always sneak is the ESP trainer.
Yeah. And he scores really well too, doesn't he?
Yeah. And that thing's pretty funny too, because it's like the more you get right, there's this little bar and it has like little comments that pop up. And if you get a certain amount right, it says, we should take you to Vegas or something like.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun thing.
So for anybody who's interested, it's an app created by Russell Targ, who's a remote viewer. He was in Project Stargate and stuff like that. But Apple App Store, all you need to do is put in ESP trainer. Yeah.
Wasn't he also a physicist though? Am I just making that up?
I'm not sure.
I just pulled it up. I just gave it a quick Goog, and he's totally a physicist, parapsychologist, blah blah blah. Yes, known for his work on remote viewing, but he is also a physicist. Just saying, he has some sort of physics background.
Yeah. So ESP, usually people say there's about anywhere from about 5 to 8 different senses. I kind of personally seem to feel that there's 5. It's really a semantics game once you get past once you get into
Wait, besides our regular senses, there's 5 to 8 additional senses?
It's just the regular senses, but they're psychic. So with the French, it's like clairvoyance means clear seeing, right? So it's like each one of the senses, there's a psychic version of that. But there's, in addition to that, there's claircognizance, which is the clear knowing.
Okay,
But-
so would your general sort of hunches fall into that category? I mean, I guess hunches that are more than hunches, clear knowing, or just
Hunches, and also claircognizance too would be like twins have it. One can tell when something's wrong with the other one, or like,
oh, right, clear knowing. Okay, great.
yeah,
So
like we do it all the time. Like some or another, you're able to figure out exactly the minute I get up and call me on the phone or text me.
I know, I'm
weird.
so annoying.
Or like,
You're awake now. Let's talk. Hi.
Just so everybody knows, this has been happening like the past month quite a bit. It's pretty funny, but
on an intense level. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, you do it too, because today I was gonna get a hold of you, and then before I could dial your number, the phone rang and it was you. That happens a lot though. Or like her family, like, if we're talking about mom, she called. It just happens all the time.
Yeah, or anything, anytime anything serious goes down, Ma knows. And, well,
oh yeah,
she might not know consciously, but she always called. So the 5 usually commonly accepted clairs would be the clairaudience, which would be which would be more like visions, dreams, premonitions, reading signs and symbols.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then, claircognizance we talked about. Clairaudience, clear hearing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like hearing a voice inside of your head. Sometimes people have confused it with inner dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, for instance, I'll be working in a situation. I used to bartend, and somebody would come into the bar like a regular, and I couldn't remember their name. And all of a sudden, like, I hear it clearly, like in the center of my brain, it feels like, oh, her name is Jessie. And then that is her name.
Mm-hmm.
That's how clairaudience happens to me. Or sometimes I have clairaudience, like when I get up in the morning. I think they might be some kind of spirit guides or something, because they usually will give me like some kind of like scientific term or something weird, and it just kind of sticks in my brain. Like, oh, here's an example. So there was one day right away when I got up, I heard this word in my head that said Nidra, and it was really, really insistent. So like Nidra, Nidra, Nidra. So I went and looked it up, and it took me a while to figure it out. But Nidra is a type of yoga.
Yeah.
A type of sleep yoga.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was experiencing that clairaudient message in kind of like coming out of lucidity. So I thought that was really, really interesting. That was kind of a clairaudience, but it can be like, clairaudience could be like a word, a phrase, names, songs, all those things.
I had an interesting experience one time when I was doing some energy healing on somebody in doing a session in South Dakota when we were there. And she's a really cool lady and just felt like she needed some extra love. So I was giving her a session, and she didn't express anything about this to me before, but during her session, and I don't necessarily have like like hearing things like this like so clearly all the time. Like that's not usually, I do get impressions or more like feelings and visuals I interpret on kind of a feely basis. But this was a word that was coming through, and it was like, it didn't really understand what it was, but it was on repeat. It was like 2 syllables, and I was having a hard time because I didn't know the word. It wasn't like a English word. It sounded just kind of like 2-syllable sounds to me. And it was like really over and over and over again. And I really didn't have, I don't know. So anyways, after the healing, I'm telling her some of the things I felt or things, whatever. And I was like, I really have no idea what this was. But this sound, these 2-syllable sounds were on repeat, like really strongly. And I'm just saying it because I don't know. And I told her what the word was. And she said, oh, that's really interesting because I have some Native American lineage. And for years, I've been trying to figure out what it is. And it's either this tribe or this other tribe. And one of those names was exactly the word that was coming through. And I was not familiar with that name. I was not familiar with that tribe's name.
Yeah.
Prior to the session. And she's like, are you sure it wasn't this? And I said, no, it was not that. It was this noise. And she's like, okay, this other tribe that I think my family might be from is this. And I was like, yeah. And it was very like it almost spooked me out a little bit because I was like, okay, that's not even a word I know. That's not a tribe I know. That's not anything that I know because she's from the Southeast. Most of my familiarity of like names of tribal stuff is, West Coast where I live.
Yeah.
Or where I grew up in Minnesota. Right. So anyways, that floored me. I was like, oh, and she's like, I've been wondering forever about which one of those 2 tribes I'm from.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. It was like, we both kind of we were a little like, I was floored. She was floored. She was like, thanks for answering that question. I'm like, I don't know where that came from or what that was. Take it for what it means and cool. Good on you. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that's an awesome example of that. And cool confirmation though, too. That must have like blown you away.
It was like on like the word I heard and the word I was trying to say was that word.
Yeah.
In language I don't know.
Yeah. My experience too, Joe and I are both energy healers, and we come from different practices, but essentially it's kind of all very similar. I do Reiki, and I get a lot of messages similar to that too, as well. And kind of in my experience, that's a really good way for the spirit world to communicate to you, is auditorily like that. At least it is for me in my experience.
I've heard that men are more prone to that than women. And I don't know if that's just a pile of BS or whatever, but that a lot of times men will interpret things in an auditory way versus other ways. And that's
Sure.
more prevalent for men. And like I said, I have no idea if that's a pile of bullshit or not, but it's just one of those things I ran across and, kind of thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if that's any truth to it.
As far as I'm aware too, like with the clairaudience is a little bit
There's
less.
a fat girl's name.
She came from Planet Claire. She came from Planet Claire.
Oh, I'm sorry. Whoa, Breakfast Club sidebar.
Yeah, but with clairaudience, I've had similar things like that happen when I do energy work on people. I had a dead relative come through when I was working on somebody just to give a message and stuff like that. And I heard this Schubert's Ave Maria playing. And I was talking about that and some of the other messages I was getting. And apparently I would give my client the willies because she was like, yeah, that was the song that was playing when we had like a memorial service in this room. And
whoa, yeah, right. And then you're
like,
man, I don't know. Sometimes you just say stuff I tend to try to just say stuff that whatever impressions, and if it's understood, then okay, but I'll try to just say stuff that has come to mind or popped in my brain, and I don't know if that's my brain or an intuition or whatever, but then when
Yeah.
that stuff happens, it's kind of a gut punch to me, as too, it's like,
Right.
I don't know, it's funny when you experience that sort of revelation, like with the person that's getting or receiving a healing, because in some way it's a healing. As a facilitator, it's a healing for us as well. I don't know. That makes
Mhm.
sense. It's just sort of like, I don't know, it's like just as surprising and connecting and deepening,
Absolutely.
for the facilitator as it is for the person receiving. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're relating with spirit. You're relating with the other
Yeah.
person's spirit and the spirit that wants to come through with them and help
Mhm.
facilitate the healing session. And yeah, I think it's just good all the way around, right?
Yeah. It's very humbling. It's very,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because you're being a vessel and a space holder.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
So clairaudience.
Clairs. The
The
clairs.
clairs. So the clairsent, like the Heathers, yeah.
The clairs. Man, all the movies are coming out of my mouth.
Now we're going way back and dating ourselves.
I'm old.
You're past that right now.
I'm old. Okay, so the clairs, ESP.
So yeah, clairsentience, clear feeling. This
Yeah.
is one that probably is the most common for people. I think this is actually more the gut feeling one. Like claircognizance is like kind of like, yeah, I think something might be wrong. This is like I feel it in my gut.
Hmm. Also,
And
like extreme empathy too, like
yeah,
clairsentience. Like, is that like picking up like other people's gobbledygook?
yeah, totally. From my understanding, the difference in between empathy and clairsentience is that clairsentience, you can pick up on what other people are putting out or the vibe of an environment, or like you can get information from touching an object, like psychometry kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference in between that and empathy is that empathy, you fully take it on, like you fully experience it. And sometimes with empathy, you can't make a distinction between your feelings and the vibe and environment or somebody else's feelings.
Yeah.
That separation isn't there as much, but I think they are very, very related. And once again, like a lot of the stuff is just like semantics a little bit when it comes down to a certain point. But the last clear that I want to bring up for me, my process around it, I kind of end up linking in clear smelling and clear tasting in the same category, because your taste and your smell are kind of related anyway, so you might as well. But terminology wise, I've heard people refer to clear smelling as clear salience. I think maybe clear olfactorance. And then clear tasting is clear gustance, I believe.
Gustance? I didn't never
Gustance.
heard that. I've heard clairsalience, but not gustance.
Yeah.
Like gastronomy, whatever. Is
Yeah.
it
Yes.
GUS or GAS?
I think it's GUS. Anyway, I kind of like the clear olfactorance because it's your olfactory
Olfactory, yeah. Kind of,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. And those are a little bit more unusual.
But I mean, actually, is it though? Like a lot of people will be like, oh, I smelled the rose perfume my grandma always wore, or like I smelled the Old Spice my grandpa always wore.
Right.
Like a lot of people have experiences with smelling how maybe a loved one used to smell.
Yeah.
Or like, when people have experiences with Mother Mary and they smell like roses or something.
Roses. Yeah. I associate that with our grandma Charlotte.
Roses?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah, because she used to always have like it was like rose scented soap or perfume or something like that in her bathroom all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when she's come through nights when the veils have been thinner, like Halloween and Christmas and stuff, I smelled that before. That's the only time it's happened to me. But yeah, that is true though. Like with the paranormal world and ghosts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
People smell like cigarettes or cigars or perfumes. Mhm. The tasting one is weird though. I don't think that's ever happened. And I haven't met anybody that's happened to.
Well, I was watching the Long Island medium, Teresa Caputo. She
On
tastes stuff a
Lifetime
lot.
Channel.
Plug, plug, plug. No, Lifetime is not sponsoring us yet. Not yet.
Not
She
yet.
tastes stuff a lot. Like she has like metallic tastes or the taste of blood or whatever. So, I mean,
Yeah, that's Claire Augustins for sure.
say it again. Claire what?
Claire Augustins.
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 Claire Augustins.
Yeah.
Claire Augustins. Okay, I've never heard that. Okay. Clear tasting. Let's go with that.
Yeah, and so
Those are the Claires.
those are the Claires. Those are the Claires. One kind of note I wanted to make too with the clairsentience and empathy stuff. Like there's even different kinds of empathy that are really weird too. And just thought I'd bring that to the table a little bit because I have this really weird thing that happens where I'm like a physical empath, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if somebody has a headache that I'm close to and I'm around them, I have a headache. Or in extreme cases, there was one time where I took our mom to cataract surgery and she just went in. It was like the same day surgery where they just like cut that little piece off your eye.
Yeah.
And you go back home again.
It's like outpatient surgery or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I took her home because she didn't want to drive. Makes sense, right? I went to work and was trying to use a calculator at work, and I couldn't see out of the same eye that she just had operated on.
You're like, dude, Mom, this is so annoying. I can't.
It sucked. So I
know that's kind of annoying.
I had to use that calculator all day at work, and I had one eye open the whole time. Well, I was on the freaking calculator, and people were like, "What's wrong with you?"
Is he winking at me? What's that creep doing behind the bar? He's winking at me.
Yeah, I was like,
no, he's just, is he a pirate?
It's like, my eye's just really bothering me today. Like, talk to him about physical empathy because they look at me like I'm insane. So,
like, I'm just, I don't know, transmuting my mom's cataract surgery. Pay no mind. I'll be better tomorrow.
Yeah. And there was one more example too with our family where Elizabeth had our older sister, our big sister, Elizabeth, and she was having a really, really bad hernia situation going on. And we were like, I was around her a lot during that time period. And I got this like really tiny little hernia in like the same area. And it was really bizarre. It was just this like really, really small one. And it ended up not being nothing serious. Like I just pushed it back in and healed it up. It healed on its own, but still I was like, what Christ? Is this going to happen? Like
that also sucks and is kind of annoying, but then also you just pushed it back in. I mean, what
yeah, because it was small.
Oh my god, that's totally. I did not hear this. I've never heard this story.
The physical empathy hernia situation. That was super weird.
Huh.
Yeah, it's totally healed. So it's totally fine.
Huh.
Yep.
So when you asked me what I thought about non-local consciousness, I immediately made a list of like things that come to my mind that actually, that ties into a lot of the clairs, like these different sort of themes. But one of the things that sort of popped into my mind was, first off, is just like the physics sort of perspective of like quantum entanglement, right?
Yeah.
Quantum entanglement is basically when the fate of particles, more than one particle, are tied, right? So, no matter how far apart the particles are, they're connected in a way that affects each other. So if something happens with one, it's immediately reflected in the other, which is kind of like, that knowing, or that that connection. But it was, again, across, these particles are across vast distances. So that's sort of, I guess, the physics perspective of like proven sort of non-local consciousness, right? And I was just kind of poking around about it. And one thing that I found, which I feel like I've heard before, but I'd forgotten, but Albert Einstein called these quantum entanglements spooky action at a distance.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I was like, I love that. I love the spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
And then actually I got down this rabbit hole of like this big discussion about whether Albert Einstein was autistic. Have you heard this before?
No, but that
But
wouldn't
I mean,
surprise me.
it wouldn't surprise me either. Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, not every socially awkward person is autistic, but they do describe his personality as socially awkward, which I'm sure if you're that brilliant, it would be hard to like just have a normal conversation with people. So,
Right.
So yeah, the quantum entanglement stuff is really interesting to me, just because that's something we're able to look at. And then also there's that discovery of the God particle, right? The Higgs boson particle that has now sort of come to pass this last, I don't know, maybe it was like 7 or 8 years that they proved that over in the CERN particle collider.
Yeah.
In, where is it? Switzerland? Where is it?
Yeah, Switzerland. That's
in
one
the
of them.
mountains of Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's sort of when energy, the sort of bridge of when energy can become mass. I also kind of think that's an example of non-local consciousness, like channeling into a physical form, right? Like there's some piece of the mystery there.
It's almost like trans-dimensional a little bit, like something changing from one state to the other. Yeah.
Right. And we talk all the time about people, it's kind of a buzzword, manifestation or whatever, but just that idea of like thought forms or like energy gaining some sort of momentum in our consciousness and all that. Like, is that, is that part of what we're doing? Is that part of how our brains work? I don't know. These are the things I pontificate about.
We talk a lot about the observer effect too, quite a bit.
The observer effect too. That's also, that's also kind of like almost that quantum entanglement. And sometimes, there's this like little bit of a conundrum in the science community because a lot of these scientific studies have not been able to be repeated. There's a repeatability crisis because of the observer effect. That's the going idea, I guess, is that the observer effect is somehow impacting the repeatability of something,
Sure.
So I don't know, maybe you have a hypothesis and maybe you set your controls up and maybe you have your experiment and you have all your quantifying variables and you do everything right and you whatever and you do it. But maybe part of what is making that go or making your experiment succeed, what if that is partially your intent?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then some other researcher somewhere else is like maybe trying to debug your work, let's say, and they're trying to repeat your work, right? And so then where does their intention lie? Is it in the same place as the original researcher?
Exactly, because they want to see it fail.
It's just a philosophical question, based in like that observer effect thing. And like, does that actually affect how we're carrying out science? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I just have a lot of questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I think you can narrow by having your control. I think you can narrow down the amount of things that can interfere with it, but you can't be totally taken away from the equation and completely, I don't think, with human involvement.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah. And that's part of, you know, I always kind of poo-pooed that like conscious co-creation thing.
Yeah.
That people in New Age circles sort of blab about. But there is maybe something to that.
We don't necessarily need to listen to anything else those people have to say, but
yeah, it's amazing how much some of the New Age spiritual stuff really kind of rubs me the wrong way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thoughts are things discussion and like conscious co-creation and like, oh,
Like
that's
The
just happened.
Secret. Remember when The Secret came out?
Oh man.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There's a bunch of yuck to it. But then there's also like, maybe that smidgen of truth of like, yeah, thoughts are powerful. Words are powerful. Thought forms do have some sort of weight to them, you know?
Mhm.
So, but I'm also not sure that my grief is what's causing my cancer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't resolve my grief, therefore it's my fault that I have ovarian cancer. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's that blame thing, Monique. It's your fault that's happening too, because you should be more in control of your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a
Exactly.
major issue with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a lot of the manipulation that people like the Scientology cult, you know, they really use that as a way to control and shame and control people as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's that same sort of tactic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, blown up in a big way, but it's still, you know. Anyways, I guess there's some thoughtfulness to how you hold this, you know, in your life.
Yeah.
I think other sort of things that popped into my head are like there is cellular memory, you know, biology and physiology is definitely documented cellular memory. And also, we're starting to realize that like genetics can store historical things from your lineage, you know,
Trauma. Yeah.
trauma, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's another sort of, I guess, more sciencey or whatever way of looking at non-local consciousness. But I think all this stuff is kind of the same, whether you say DNA. I mean, honestly, DNA is one of the most magical structures that there is, right? Genetics.
Right.
DNA, I mean, like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. To me, it's like an antenna and a receiver at the same time.
Yeah. And its shape being like a double helix and all that. Like, I don't know, I guess that like spiral shape, I don't know. It's all quite magical, if you ask me.
You can store an ungodly amount of information too in DNA.
Yeah, and it is continually receiving information from your environment. Like with epigenetics, you can experience like an environmental stress that'll come in and, you know, they'll flip your switch on your gene to express in a different way, right? Because each gene has all these alleles, right? Which are all these little switches that can, you know, be affected, you know? So like every gene has a multitude of ways to be expressed, you know, every gene in your, so, you know, the little combination of how things get switched on and switched off can be affected by your environment, you know. So again, with that whole like retroactive present and future thing, right? Because retroactively, you know, environmental stressors and stuff can get into the DNA and push into the future, which is your lineage, right? That you're holding trauma in your DNA or whatever. You can be experiencing in this present life things from your external experience that may affect your genetics and push into the future. So again, just got to say that whole Web of Wyrd thing where it's retroactive, it's present, it's forward. So it's like forward, backwards, whatever. All of that is happening in our genetics. Maybe that's a whole freaking weird rant. But
no, not at all.
it's like, it's hard for me to separate like a lot of the mystery and the magic from like some of the science stuff that we know. So
Oh,
I'm just
it's all
always
there.
seeing, I'm always seeing the parallel, right? I'm always seeing the connection.
Yeah.
So
If you don't mind me sharing one more thing real quick too.
please, yeah.
But yesterday I was listening to an interview with this remote viewer, Lynn Buchanan, who's part of Stargate. He was saying that at one point they were doing CAT scans on people's brains that were doing remote viewing. And what had been found was that he said he couldn't remember exactly the part of the brain, like the scientific name for it, but it was the part of the brain that was in charge of memory. So you're saying essentially when we're doing remote viewing on these targets and gathering psychic information about the future, we are essentially remembering the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like that deja revu.
Dude, which,
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on about deja revu because I've had that a lot in my life. And I started, before I knew the term deja revu, I just would call it a memory of the future because I would
Yeah.
have dreams, or like I would have a moment where, I remember being in I think I was in seventh grade home ec class, and my teacher was getting into it with this naughty kid in class. And I could have spoken the dialogue between the teacher and this kid. Like I knew what she was going to say. I knew what he was going to say. I mean, I could have just sat there and mouthed it like a movie I know, or something like. And I just remember being like, what in the hell was that? Like, how did I know that whole conversation and could have said it? And yeah, so I've definitely had a lot of that. And unfortunately, it's always just been about virtually meaningless things like tiff between a schoolmate and a teacher. Like it's never been about anything very juicy or good, I don't think.
Yeah. Or like life saving, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing useful.
Useful.
Sort
That's
of.
what I meant to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
just nothing nothing useful. Other than it just points to what is that? And yeah, what is that? And it's a memory of the future because it's not like I remembered having the dream and then carried that with me. And then the thing happened. It was like, as the thing was happening, I was like, oh yeah, all of this. I remember all of this.
Yeah. But back to the science too. I mean, that's actually happening in a section in your brain that's measurable.
That's crazy that's happening in the memory zone of your brain.
Yeah.
And that, because it is what that feels like, is a memory of the future. It's kind of cool that they could see that on an MRI and called it that, Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So we're plugged into some collective or something, that is all the past, where time is not linear. Is that the working theory? Is that why remote viewing happens? Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine met a schmuck on a dating app, and he does day trading with he uses remote viewing to do day trading.
Yeah.
I think I might have told you that.
Yeah.
He turned out to be kind of like, maybe he was doing it without very good training and not in a very good container, not in a very good way. So I hope it turns out okay for him.
Yeah.
But
I do want to say one thing real quick here too, like just to do it justice. The original remote viewing is called control remote viewing, and that was developed by the military. And there's a lot of people that are calling what they're practicing and teaching other people remote viewing, and it might not be that really related to controlled remote viewing, like Project Stargate and what we're talking about.
So what do you think the word control, like, what's the significance of the control remote viewing? Like, does that mean they're using controls? Like, is in like a science control, or like?
Okay, so with the remote viewing stuff, from what I remember, the control was you first come up with basic things like, is it natural? Is it man-made? Or what was the other one? There's like three basic things, and then you go from that to temperature, feeling, shapes, colors, all of that stuff doesn't have any like
emotional triggers.
emotion tied to it. Yeah.
So control remote viewing being a more systematic way of removing bias, which also goes back into like setting up controls on an experiment or with your scientific method. Your control is sort of like the unaffected, the thing that doesn't receive treatment, right? Or it's like a way to compare things. So I just wonder if they get that word from that, or if they mean control isn't just like removing bias, or
I think that's what it is. Like having a control by removing bias. I'm pretty sure that's what that means, but I'm not a trained controlled remote viewer, so I can't really tell you. So
interesting.
Yeah. That's as much as I know.
I also learned something about that, that document that you sent me. Maybe we'll talk about that more some other day. Stargate's like a rabbit hole to go down. Project Stargate is. But what I learned too was, and I guess I never really knew this, but that the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, is the one that was in charge of a lot of the remote viewing, that Project Stargate program. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
it was them and Stanford Research Institute, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess one thing I hadn't ever realized is that the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, is their sort of sphere of what they do is around defense intelligence, and the CIA is around foreign intelligence. And I always associated the Stargate program with the CIA. But I mean, I'm sure there's some crossover there, because I'm sure defense intelligence and foreign intelligence, I'm sure those agencies have to cross over at some point, because
they do, and they were used like that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, for instance, I can't remember which remote viewers were involved. So Lynn Buchanan may have been one of them, or maybe it was Joe McMonagle. I can't remember. But anyway, they helped located this new high-tech Russian sub called the Boomer or something like that.
The Boomer.
I think it was called the Boomer.
I'm sorry, that's so funny.
It sounds so lame.
That's like the insult for like our dad right now. Oh, you Boomer.
Yeah.
Right? Anyways.
I know. But yeah, I mean, that's a crossover, right? Foreign and defense.
Yeah. Foreign and defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found out about the Project Stargate too was that Robert Monroe was associated with that. Yeah.
The Monroe Institute.
The Monroe Institute. Yeah, but he started the Monroe Institute after he was involved with Project Stargate.
I'm not really sure about Robert Monroe's history, but Skip Atwater, who was kind of the leader of Stargate, from what I remember, he retired, I think, in '88, and then went over
to the Monroe Institute. Oh, that's how the connection is. Okay. Yeah. That's really interesting. And then also, I just did a quick little Goog on Robert Monroe, which I thought was interesting, is that he got his degree at Ohio State University, which is a notorious recruiting ground for some of these alphabet agencies. You know that?
Oh, Ohio State?
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard that.
Yeah, they recruit a lot of like CIA folks and stuff out of Ohio State University.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little just reputation thing. So I just thought that was kind of random and interesting. Not that he was in the defense community, but I just find it interesting. He was kind of around, and then Skip Atwater went. Well, anyways, the Monroe Institute is sort of like, they call it everything but remote viewing. Mm-hmm. I mean, essentially is like this training that uses binaural beats. So engaging both the hemispheres of the brain, and that, what do they call it? Hemisync is what they call it.
Yeah.
That's syncing the hemispheres of your brain. But that binaural beats is a lot like some of like the shamanic drumming, and there's like a lot of like shamanic journeying stuff that I see when I read and I look into a lot of like the Monroe Institute, like meditative sort of psychic development stuff. It's a lot of shamanic journeying things. And so I always wondered, is there like a tie between remote viewing and shamanic journeying? I've always kind of thought they're just so in the same.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you journey and you go to a place, I've done journeying before many times, and it's like spiritually, mentally, to me, it feels more like I'm mentally projecting myself somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Because I'll think of a person that I want to do a healing sesh with and actually like go there and show up in their space pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's in my head. It's a mental projection, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my experience.
There's also like otherworld like maps that shamans have sort of drawn or tried to communicate, where there's actually like these places, right, in the astral world, like actual like a map of how to get around to these different spots. And the Monroe Institute teaches these different levels. They call them like focus levels or whatever, where you're actually training yourself to get to these different focus levels. And that it just really reminds me of some of this like mapping of the astral worlds that like shamans have taught about. Anyways, I find it just like very paralleled in this whole like focus level 32 or whatever people are getting to with the Monroe Institute stuff. And anyways.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of it just kind of comes down to like semantic stuff. Like it's all really like, kind of the same. So.
Some white dude reinterpreted it for the military or whatever.
Exactly. I don't know. Yeah.
So, and boil it down there.
and that's why I always try to bring up like some of the native terms and ideas for things, because like they're still kind of stuck in that like colonial mindset in the sciences, and it's like, dude, come on.
This stuff has been in different cultures all around the world for a long time. We'll have to talk more about non-local consciousness stuff, because I'd love to get into like more about like the donor related personality changes, when people like receive organ from somebody and then they like start craving chicken nuggets because the person who died and gave them their organ, like all they ever had was chicken nuggets and stuff like that. I'd like to talk a little bit about that maybe next time.
Yeah.
And also like, we didn't even touch like NDEs or OBEs, So,
or mediumship or channeling or projection.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then also just like that whole person to person sort of that when we join consciousness and sort of make stuff happen, that sort of group think thing.
Yes.
Where you can sort of group think sort of energetic container into existence and then start using it to do stuff energetically, some of that, which is in alignment with ceremonial so anyways, we should continue talk about this, and I think we should call it for today.
Cool. Catch us again for part 2 of non-local consciousness.
Siblings gonna chat it up about stuff.
That's right. Until then, keep getting down with your weird self. Be weird, stay weird. And we love you.
Loving everybody. And I love you, big brother.
Hey, I love you too, sis.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Great. Ciao for now.